Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us here on Health Professional Radio. In this segment, we'll be talking with Joe Ferra, Interim CEO and CFO of Elevation Oncology. He's joining us to talk about the company's development of an antibody-drug conjugate in the oncology field. The company's Chinese partner released data on the company's lead asset, which demonstrated safety and early signs of efficacy in patients with resistant refractory solid tumors. Welcome to Health Professional Radio. Joe Ferra, thank you for taking the time this morning.
Thank you, Neil. Very nice to meet you, and appreciate the time and the opportunity to tell you more about Elevation Oncology.
Well, nice to meet you as well. Before you tell us about Elevation Oncology, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to your current role as Interim CEO of Elevation Oncology briefly.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been incredibly fortunate to have a career for over 20 years in this industry and serving, as well as many others, to, find better treatments for patients. And when we say patients, I like to say the patients are our family members, they're ourselves. And so while certainly it's been a long walk, I consider myself one of many who is serving a mission to just improve cancer treatment overall. I do have a background in chemistry. I spent over 15 years primarily as an advisor in the industry, advising companies like Elevation Oncology, raising capital and helping them to make better strategic decisions. And then I was brought to Elevation Oncology. I was attracted to Elevation Oncology because, the mission is around finding selective cancer therapies. And we all know that one of the holy grails in oncology is treating the tumor itself, but staying away from attacking the healthy cells. And at Elevation Oncology, we have our own specific approach to making sure that we can do that in a more selective way for overall better experience for patients who are suffering from cancer.
Now, it's my understanding that the treatment of solid tumors and gastric cancer is an unmet medical need. Can you explain to us what the current treatment landscape of solid tumors is and why it remains an unmet need?
Yeah, for sure. So gastric cancer, and which is more commonly known as stomach cancer, has been reported as being the fifth most commonly diagnosed cancer worldwide. And in the U.S., approximately 26,000 people are diagnosed annually, and approximately 11,000 will die from the disease in 2023. So there's a lot of patients out there who unfortunately find out that they are come down with stomach cancer. A big problem with stomach cancer also is that some of the early signs are just things that we typically experience. Heartburn, it starts off with typical stomach ailments that most of us would not think twice about. So patients not necessarily know that they should go see a doctor, that it could be early signs of something more serious. They just think maybe they had something bad to eat over the last few days. So as usual with oncology, early detection is a big part of getting ahead of it, and that's one of the challenges with stomach cancer. Once it is diagnosed, chemotherapy and immunotherapies are pretty much standard of care, but they leave a lot on the table in terms of really treating the patient's specific disease and the specifics of what could drive their gastric cancer. Our lead program, EO3021, which is targeting Claudin 18.2, one of the key targets, is in a more specific approach to being selective to the uniqueness of that patient's cancer for hopefully a better outcomes than what chemotherapy and immunotherapy can do.
Is there something that these tumors have in common that makes them so hard to treat, or is each tumor different? Like patients, each patient is different. Are these tumors contain, subtle nuances?
Yes. And I think, as usual with oncology, in any type of, whenever you're talking about solid tumors, there are a lot of things the same, but the uniqueness and the subtle differences is where the opportunity presents itself, because chemotherapy and immunotherapy are sort of a blanket approach at treating oncology. But with selective cancer therapies like we're doing at Elevation Oncology, like what we're doing at 3021, is can you find out how a specific tumor is unique and use that uniqueness for a more targeted approach? I think across all of solid tumors, that's really where the oncology field is increasingly geared towards. Part of the reason why antibody-drug conjugates are a great technique to do that. In gastric cancer, I think we are, as an industry and as a field, we're only at the beginnings of finding out all those nuances that could be ways we could leverage better treatments.
What about the potential for expansion to other types of cancer?
Yes. And our lead program, EO3021, the most important indication in terms of the unmet need, surely worldwide, is certainly around gastric cancer. But the target itself is also prevalent in esophageal cancer, pancreatic cancer, ovarian, and lung cancer. So even beyond the gastric cancer opportunity, which is where we're primarily focused first, there's still a lot of other cancers where the same drug can be applied.
Now, I did mention that there had been some demonstrated safety and early signs of efficacy. Could you expand a bit on some of the progress that's been made in preclinical and clinical trial testings of 3021?
Yes, for sure. So we, as you mentioned, we licensed worldwide rights to EO3021 outside of Greater China from our Chinese partner. Our Chinese partner had already been executing a phase 1 trial at the time we announced the in-licensing, which was of July of 2022. They reported their first clinical data for that program at American Society of Clinical Oncology in June in Chicago, which had a 47.1% overall response rate in gastric cancer alone, and had a safety and tolerability profile, which was certainly very amenable to a drug that was in this type of population. And we are expanding on that by moving into a phase 1 trial for EO3021 ourselves, we've said in the second half of this year. So as we sit here right now, our partner has reported very promising data for the drug, and we are on the cusp of starting our trial ourselves, starting in the U.S. in the second half, knowing that we have a drug that is making a difference for patients already. What else is
Elevation Oncology working on? And then give us a website where we can learn more.
Yeah, sure. So, beyond the EO3021, we as a company are largely focused on finding selective cancer therapies that can be more specific to treating a patient's uniqueness of their tumors. And our approach has always been to find targets that we think are emerging in oncology and then finding the right modality to attack those targets. And that could either be a small molecule approach, that could be a monoclonal antibody approach, or that could be an antibody-drug conjugate approach, as we're doing EO3021. We as a company think that through partnerships, we can go out and find the best technologies available at any given time that are most appropriate for the given target. And we are doing that for a series of targets now. We're going to continue to build the pipeline that sort of piggybacks on exactly EO3021, which was focused on a target, focused on the right approach for that target, and then going out and seeing the landscape and partnering with a company that we think has done unique science for a better opportunity overall to help patients living with the disease. Well, our website is www.elevationoncology.com. And on that website, you'll certainly see a lot about EO3021, as I already mentioned.
Great. It's been a pleasure. I'm glad that you took the time this morning to speak with us. Hopefully you'll return and give us some updates on this EO3021. And again, thank you for your time, Joe, and appreciate it.
Well, Neil, it was great to talk to you. Enjoy telling you more about the company and what we're doing on behalf of patients. I look forward to another opportunity to talk with you on Health Professional Radio.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Joe Ferra. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. Also on Anchor, Spotify, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.